The salt spray kissed Dal's face, a familiar cold caress. Below, the sea churned, slate-grey under a sky threatening rain. It was a harsh beauty, this Jeju coastline, all volcanic rock and relentless waves. Dal, small and wiry in rough-spun clothes, hands perpetually raw from mending nets and hauling baskets, blended into the landscape of the fishing village. A nobody, a boy easily overlooked, which was exactly the point. Dal watched the distant figure of Magistrate Kim Chil-hyun's main overseer strutting along the path towards the cluster of thatched roofs, his silk vest a jarring splash of colour against the muted tones of island life. A vulture circling. Dal's knuckles whitened on the coarse rope in hand. 5 years. 5 years since the sea had supposedly claimed her family, her mother, her grandmother, the fierce, proud Haenyeo leaders of their generation. 5 years of living as Dal, the quiet orphan boy taken in by the taciturn fisherman Old Man Kang, swallowing grief and honing a different kind of strength. Patience. The sea hadn't taken them. Greed had. Magistrate Kim's greed. Dal's gaze drifted towards a modest cottage slightly apart from the others, smoke curling thinly from its chimney. Hwa-yeon lived there, daughter of the exiled scholar Master An, another soul adrift in this place, though her exile was one of paper and politics, not salt and silence like Dal's, like Sora's. The name felt foreign on her own tongue now, a ghost whispered only in the dead of night, or in the presence of Elder May, the village simbang, the shaman who knew the truth. Who had found a half-drowned girl clinging to life amidst the wreckage deliberately caused and hidden her, crafting the identity of Dal. Footsteps crunched nearby. Bokgu, young and earnest, his face already etched with the worry lines of men twice his age, approached. Dal, the overseer is calling everyone to the drying grounds. More news from the magistrate. His voice was tight. News from Magistrate Kim was never good. Dal followed Bokgu, melting into the small crowd gathering on the flat, wind-swept area where seaweed and fish were laid out to dry. The air hung thick with apprehension, heavier than the damp sea air. The overseer, a man named Choi, with eyes as small and sharp as obsidian chips, stood on a crate, surveying the villagers with undisguised contempt. Magistrate Kim, Choi began, his voice grating, in his wisdom and concern for the tribute owed to the capital, has decreed a new requirement. He paused for effect, enjoying the fear flickering across the worn faces. Effective immediately, the abalone tribute quota is doubled. And the pearl divers, his gaze swept over the women, the Haenyeo standing stoically, will deliver 20 prime pearls each by the next full moon. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Doubled? 20 pearls? It was impossible. The waters were already overfished, the accessible pearls dwindling. This wasn't a request. It was a sentence. My wife, she nearly drowned last week trying to meet the old quota, a man choked out. Choi glared at him. Hardship builds character. The magistrate expects results, not excuses. Failure, he spat, will have consequences. He mentioned stricter inspections, confiscation of boats, harsher penalties for shortfalls. Bokgu's mother clutched her chest, her face pale. His family was already struggling, their boat needing repairs they couldn't afford. Dal saw the trap tightening. This wasn't just about tribute. It was about breaking them, ensuring complete control. And perhaps, Dal thought with a cold dread, creating more convenient accidents for those who couldn't comply. Rumours had already begun to whisper through the village. A royal inspector was due to visit from Hanyang soon. Kim was likely trying to squeeze every last drop from the island before scrutiny arrived, or perhaps creating a smokescreen of diligence. Either way, the time for waiting was over. The patience Sora had cultivated for 5 years frayed, replaced by a burning urgency. Tonight. The investigation had to begin tonight. The sea kept its secrets, Elder May had often said. But Sora knew the hidden caves along the coast kept Magistrate Kim's secrets too. Secrets she would drag into the light or die trying. That night, under a sliver of moon veiled by fast-moving clouds, Dal slipped away from Old Man Kang's hut. Dressed in dark, close-fitting clothes scavenged over time, Sora moved like a shadow towards the jagged northern coastline, a place villagers avoided after dark, haunted by tales of drowned spirits. Here, the waves crashed against volcanic cliffs riddled with caves, many accessible only from the sea, and only by those who knew the treacherous currents and submerged tunnels. Haenyeo knowledge, her birthright. Carrying a small waterproofed bundle containing flint, tinder, and a tiny oil lamp, Sora reached the edge of a familiar inlet. This was where Kim's men were rumoured to transfer smuggled goods, ginseng, silks, perhaps even illegal weapons, onto mainland boats under cover of darkness. Taking deep, practiced breaths, the Sumbisori, the unique whistle of the Hanyo, silenced before it could form, Sora slipped into the frigid water. The shock of the cold was violent, but familiar. She moved with powerful economical strokes, diving beneath the surface, her eyes adjusting to the murky depths. Kelp forests swayed like ghostly dancers. She navigated by the feel of the currents, the shape of the rocks she knew as well as her own hands. She found the hidden entrance, a narrow fissure masked by seaweed, and squeezed through into the underwater tunnel. Her lungs burned, but years of training held panic at bay. She surfaced inside a small sea cave, the air thick and damp. Water slapped against the rocks. Carefully she lit the lamp, the small flame casting flickering shadows. The cave floor was littered with debris, but near the back, partially hidden by a rockfall, she saw them. Discarded crates, different from the standard fishing supplies, marked with symbols she didn't recognize, but felt were mainland merchant seals. And wedged in a crevice as if dropped in haste, a small intricately carved wooden pipe, clearly not of Jeju origin. Not proof of murder or the full extent of Kim's crimes, but a start. Evidence that unauthorized trade happened here. She memorized the markings, took a small shard from one broken crate, and extinguished the lamp. The dive back out was faster, fueled by adrenaline and a grim sense of purpose. Emerging onto the rocks, shivering, she scanned the darkness. No sign of guards. She had been lucky tonight. But luck wouldn't be enough. She needed more. Something concrete. Something that screamed treason and theft, not just petty smuggling. Days turned into a tense rhythm of mending nets by day, watchful silence, and furtive explorations by night. Sora needed a reason to get closer to Magistrate Kim's compound, perhaps overhear something, observe routines. She also felt an unsettling pull towards Hwayon's cottage. The scholar's daughter was quiet, rarely venturing far, but Sora had seen her tending a small herb garden, her movements precise, her face thoughtful. Perhaps Master Ahn, despite his exile, still received news from the mainland? Perhaps Hwayon knew more than she let on? Feigning a persistent cough and claiming Old Man Kang's remedies weren't working, Sora, as Dal approached Hwayon's gate one overcast afternoon. She bowed awkwardly, clutching her chest. "Forgive my intrusion, Lady Hwayon," she mumbled, pitching her voice slightly lower, rougher. "Old Kang said you might know of herbs for a bad cough." Hwayon looked up from her weeding, surprise flickering in her intelligent eyes. She was pale, her features delicate, but there was a quiet resilience about her. She studied Dal for a moment, her gaze observant. "A cough? Let me see." She beckoned Dal closer. Her hands, though slender, moved with practiced skill as she examined a few herbs. This lungwort might help, and thyme. She spoke softly, her voice a low murmur compared to the villagers' often boisterous tones. As she gathered a small bundle, she asked, "You are Old Kang's helper?" "Dal, isn't it?" Sora nodded, keeping her eyes downcast. "You are?" Not from this village originally. The question hung in the air. Sora's heart gave a lurch. Did she see something? "No, lady, Orphan. Came here a few years back." "You seem different from the other village lads, Dal," Hwayon murmured, almost to herself, as she tied the herbs with a piece of twine. "You watch. You listen." Sora stiffened. "Just trying to earn my keep, lady." She took the herbs with another bow, her hand brushing Hwayon's briefly. An unexpected jolt like static electricity passed between them. Hwayon drew her hand back quickly, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. "Use this as a tea," she instructed, her composure regained. "Steep it well." As Sora turned to leave, Hwayon added softly, "Be careful on the coast, Dal. The tides are strong, and the magistrate's men, they patrol more often now." Was it a simple warning, or something more? Sora felt a strange mix of gratitude and unease. Hwayon saw too much, and that connection, that brief spark, was a complication Sora couldn't afford. It felt like a betrayal of the cold, hard purpose that had kept her alive. The warning proved timely. A few nights later, emboldened by her initial findings, Sora ventured closer to the magistrate's compound, hoping to observe the guard patterns near the eastern wall, where a small, seldom-used path led down towards a secluded cove. She moved through the scrub, silent as the night mist rolling in from the sea. She heard voices. 2 guards, complaining about the damp and the extra patrols. "Think someone's been nosing around the northern caves," one grumbled. "Found tracks. Told Overseer Choi." Sora froze. They knew, or suspected. She needed to pull back, but curiosity held her rooted. She crept closer, trying to see if the path was guarded. Suddenly a twig snapped under her worn sandal. The voices stopped. "Who's there?" A lantern beam cut through the darkness, sweeping towards her hiding place. Panic seized Sora. She bolted, not back towards the village, but sideways towards the cliff edge she knew overlooked the churning water far below. The guards shouted, giving chase. Lantern light bounced crazily behind her. She reached the precipice. It was a sheer drop onto jagged rocks, suicide for anyone. But Sora knew this spot. 10 feet down, hidden by an overhang, was a narrow ledge, often submerged at high tide, and below that a deep channel carved by centuries of waves. Without hesitating, she took a deep breath and leaped, not outwards, but downwards, aiming for the ledge. She hit it hard, pain shooting up her leg, but scrambled for purchase on the slippery rock. Above, the guards reached the edge, peering down into the darkness. "Gone," one panted. "Must have slipped or jumped. Foolish boy." "Good riddance," the other grunted. "One less mouth to feed." Their lantern light swept the churning water below, missing the narrow ledge completely. Sora pressed herself flat against the cold, damp rock, controlling her breathing, forcing the Hanyo calm over the terror threatening to consume her. She waited, muscles screaming, until the guards finally moved away, their voices fading. Only then did she allow herself to tremble. That was too close. Kim was tightening his grip, his paranoia growing. She needed help. She couldn't do this alone, and there was only one person she truly trusted. The path to Elder May's hut was deliberately difficult, winding through thorny bushes and uneven ground away from the main village paths. The Simbang valued her solitude, and the villagers respected her power, seeking her out only when need was great. Sora arrived as dawn painted the sky in pale watercolors. Elder May was outside, tending a small fire, her face a mask of wrinkles and wisdom, her eyes sharp and ageless. She looked up as Sora approached, showing no surprise. "The sea nearly claimed you again last night, child," she stated, not unkindly. Sora flinched. Little escaped the Simbang. "They suspect someone, Elder. I was almost caught." The magistrate grows nervous. The inspector's visit weighs on him. Elder May stirred the fire, fragrant smoke rising. "You carry a heavy burden, Sora. Revenge is a tide that can drown the swimmer." "It's not just revenge," Sora insisted, kneeling by the fire, shedding the persona of Dal for a moment. "It's justice. For my family. For the village he bleeds dry. I found crates in the North Cave, smuggled goods." Elder May nodded slowly. "The North Cave is but an overflow. The heart of his rot lies deeper. Do you remember the Whispering Pool near where your mother taught you the deep dives?" Sora frowned. It was a treacherous spot, a collapsed sea cave forming a deep, swirling pool, accessible only through a long, tight underwater tunnel, dangerous even for experienced Henyo. "Svart, my family used it sometimes, to store precious findings away from prying eyes before tribute day." "Your mother left something there," Elder May said, her voice dropping, a final act of defiance, wrapped in oilskin, hidden in the small cleft above the waterline, reachable only after the passage. Hope surged through Sora, sharp and painful. "What is it? Proof?" She found his ledger, names, dates, shipments, enough to hang him. Elder May's eyes met Sora's, but retrieving it risks everything. "That passage is unforgiving, and Kim likely knows its significance, even if he cannot reach it himself." Later that day, driven by a mix of desperation and renewed hope, Sora sought out Bokgu near the fishing boats. She kept her voice low, urgent. "Bokgu, the magistrate, he's hurting everyone, your family." Bokgu looked away, shame and anger warring on his young face. "What can we do, Dal? We are just fishermen." "Information," Sora pressed. "The guards near the eastern path last night. Do you know their schedule? When do they patrol the lower path to the cove?" Bokgu hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. He'd seen Overseer Choi strike his younger sister for dropping a basket that morning. "They change shifts at high tide," he muttered. "And they avoid the lower path when the tide turns, say it's bad luck. Especially near the Whispering Pool." High tide. The worst time to attempt the passage when the currents were strongest. but also when the guards were least likely to be near. It was a desperate gamble. The pressure intensified. Magistrate Kim, perhaps sensing the impending inspection or unnerved by the rumours of tracks found near the caves, ordered Hwayon's father, Master An, brought to the compound for questioning. The official reason was verifying exile records, but the village knew better. It was intimidation. Hwayon was frantic, her usual composure shattered. Sora, watching from a distance, felt a sickening twist of guilt. Was her probing putting others in danger? She saw Hwayon attempt to visit her father, only to be turned away curtly by the guards. Later, Sora found Hwayon sitting alone on the rocks near her cottage, staring bleakly at the sea. Sora hesitated, the urge to offer comfort warring with the need for secrecy. She approached cautiously, still as Dal. "Lady Hwayon, is Master An?" Hwayon looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. They questioned him about his old associates on the mainland, accusations of correspondence, lies. She paused, her gaze searching Dal's face. Why does the magistrate suddenly care about a forgotten exile? Sora had no answer, only the cold certainty that Kim was trying to ensure silence, perhaps suspecting the scholar knew more than he let on, or simply making an example. "Your father is a strong man, lady," Sora offered lamely. Hwayon gave a brittle laugh. "Strength matters little against unchecked power, Dal." She stood up, brushing sand from her skirt. "Thank you for the thought." She walked back towards her empty cottage, her shoulders slumped. Sora felt the weight of her own deception settle heavily. Hwayon deserved the truth. The village deserved the truth. The time for small clues was over. She had to retrieve the ledger. Tonight, at high tide, she would brave the Whispering Pool. She visited Elder May one last time. The Simbang gave her a small, smooth black stone. "Carry this. It holds the sea's memory. It may steady your breath when the darkness presses close." Sora clutched the stone, its coolness seeping into her palm. It felt like a fragile shield against the immense danger ahead. High tide clawed at the cliffs, waves booming like cannons against the rocks as Sora reached the hidden entrance to the Whispering Pool's passage. The wind howled, whipping sea spray into her face. It was madness to attempt this now. Taking the Simbang stone between her teeth, she plunged into the violent surge. The underwater tunnel was longer, tighter, the current far stronger than she remembered. Disorientation threatened. Darkness pressed in, absolute and suffocating. Her lungs screamed for air. She focused on the stone, on the rhythmic pull and release of her strokes, forcing her body through the narrow passage by sheer will. Just as black spots danced before her eyes, she felt the tunnel widen and broke the surface, gasping inside the Whispering Pool cave. It was aptly named. Water echoed, swirling in the large cavern, creating whispers and sighs. A faint phosphorescent glow emanated from algae clinging to the damp walls. High above the churning water, she saw it, the small cleft Elder May had described. Getting there meant climbing the slick, treacherous rock face. Using every ounce of strength and agility, Sora scaled the wall, finding precarious handholds and footholds. Finally, fingers raw, muscles trembling, she reached the cleft. And there it was, a tightly bound oilskin package wedged deep inside. Her heart hammered against her ribs. With trembling hands, she pulled it free. It was surprisingly heavy. She couldn't examine it here. She had to get back. The return journey through the tunnel was even more harrowing, fighting the current, exhaustion setting in. When she finally emerged back into the raging storm outside, collapsing onto the rocks, she felt bruised, battered, but triumphant. She had it. Back in the relative shelter of a small overhang, shielding the oilskin package with her body, she carefully unwrapped it. Inside, miraculously dry, was a ledger book, and tucked within its pages, a folded letter. Her mother's handwriting. Sora's breath hitched. She scanned the ledger first. Columns of dates, names of ships, cargo descriptions, ginseng, silks, porcelain, far exceeding legitimate trade, and coded notations indicating payments, routes, mainland contacts. Undeniable proof of Kim's extensive smuggling operation, his theft of royal tribute disguised within it. Then the letter, addressed simply, "To my daughter, should the sea not claim this." Tears blurred Sora's vision as she read her mother's last words. Her discovery of the ledger, her fear, her determination to hide it, her love for Sora, her final plea for justice. "He sacrifices our people for his greed, Sora. Let the sea protect this truth until you can bring it to the light. Live. Be strong, avenge us. Sora clutched the ledger and let her to her chest, the oilskin crackling. A sound nearby made her freeze. Footsteps heavy splashing through the tide pools. Guards. And with them, Overseer Choi holding a struggling figure. Bokku. Current part characters, 2,936 total characters, 2,179. Caught this rat snooping near the path, sir, one guard grunted, shoving Bokku forward. Choi shone his lantern on the fisherman's terrified face. What were you doing out in this storm, boy? Bokku stammered. Just checking my boat's mooring. Liar! Choi struck him across the face. Bokku cried out, You were watching the cove. Who sent you? Was it the scholar's girl? Sora's blood ran cold. She had to act. Stuffing the ledger back into its oilskin wrapping and securing it inside her tunic, she stepped out from the overhang, pitching her voice as Dal. Leave him alone. Choi and the guards whirled around, lanterns blinding her momentarily. Dal, what are you doing here? Choi snarled, suspicion hardening his features. Just seeking shelter from the storm, Sora said, trying to keep her voice steady. Bokku did nothing. Choi sneered. Always defending the weak, aren't you? Maybe you know more than you let on. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he took in Dal's soaked clothes, the exhaustion clinging to the small frame. You look like you've been for a swim. Before Sora could react, Choi lunged, grabbing the front of her tunic. His hand closed around the bulky oilskin package. What's this? He ripped it out. Sora instinctively fought back, shoving him hard. The element of surprise sent Choi stumbling back against a guard. Get him! Choi roared. Sora didn't wait. She turned and sprinted along the cliff edge, dodging rocks, the storm raging around her. The guards gave chase, Choi bellowing orders. She glanced back. Bokku was struggling with the remaining guard. She couldn't lead them back towards the village. There was only one direction, towards the magistrate's compound, hoping to lose them in the maze of paths or find an opportunity. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the swirling rain ahead, Hwayon, holding a lantern, her face pale with fear. Dal, they took my father, she cried, her voice nearly lost in the wind. They're moving him tonight. They say he conspired. Her words were cut off as Choi and his men burst into view behind Sora. There they are, the boy and the scholar's brat, Choi yelled triumphantly. Working together, seize them both. Sora shoved Hwayon behind her. Run, she yelled, turning to face the guards, bracing herself. This was it. No more hiding. Just as the guards closed in, a series of loud blasts echoed from the direction of the harbour, signal cannons. Above the storm's roar, shouts could be heard. The inspector! The royal inspector's ship has arrived. The guards hesitated, glancing towards the harbour lights barely visible through the rain. Choi cursed. Forget the inspector. Seize them. They have the evidence. But the momentary distraction was all Sora needed. She grabbed Hwayon's hand. This way. Trust me. Instead of running towards the village, she pulled Hwayon towards a narrow, treacherous goat path leading down the cliff face towards the turbulent sea. Dal, it's too dangerous, Hwayon cried. Safer than them, Sora yelled back, already scrambling down the slippery rocks. She moved with a speed and certainty that stunned Hwayon, her movements fluid and economical despite the storm. Choi and his men followed, slower, hampered by the terrain and their fear of the raging sea below. Reaching a small, wave-battered ledge just above the churning water, Sora paused. The cave, she gasped, pointing towards a dark opening partially obscured by the crashing waves. We hide there. It was a smuggler's bolt hole, one she'd discovered weeks ago. They scrambled inside just as Choi reached the ledge above. He peered down, rain plastering his hair to his face. Cowards! You can't hide forever! He ordered his men to find another way down. Inside the narrow cave, dripping and shivering, Hwayon stared at Sora, whose cap had been lost in the descent, revealing short, damp hair plastered to her head, her profile stark in the dim light filtering from the entrance. Dal, your movements, the way you know the cliffs, you're no fisherman's boy. Sora met her gaze, the years of deception falling away. My name is Sora, she said, her voice hoarse but clear. My mother was Lid Henyo. Magistrate Kim murdered my family 5 years ago. Hwayon gasped, her eyes wide with shock and dawning understanding. Before she could speak, Sora pressed the oilskin package into her hands. This is the proof. Kim's ledger. My mother's letter. If anything happens to me, get this to the royal inspector. Find Elder May. She will help you. Sora, Hwa-Yon whispered, clutching the package. Footsteps echoed from deeper within the cave system. Kim's men were coming from the other side. They were trapped. Current part characters, 2493. Total characters, 25,058. There's another way out, Sora said urgently, pointing towards a low passage almost hidden by the cave's curve. Underwater, it leads back out to the open sea beyond the inlet. It's risky in this storm, but it's our only chance. Hwa-Yon looked terrified. I can't swim like that. You won't have to swim far. Just hold your breath. I'll guide you, Sora promised, her Hanyo instincts taking over. Trust me. She took Hwa-Yon's hand again. Just as they reached the passage, Choi and 2 guards appeared at the main entrance, lanterns held high. There! Don't let them escape! Sora didn't hesitate. She pulled Hwa-Yon into the dark water of the passage entrance. Deep breath! Now! They submerged as the guards lunged. The passage was short but turbulent, the storm surge creating powerful eddies. Sora kept a firm grip on Hwa-Yon, kicking powerfully, guiding them through the darkness towards the faint light ahead. They surfaced sputtering in the relative calm on the far side of the headland, hidden from the cave entrance. But they weren't safe yet. On the path above, heading towards the harbour where the inspector's ship was attempting to anchor, they saw Magistrate Kim himself, flanked by guards, dragging Master Ahn, and Overseer Choi was scrambling down the rocks towards them. Quickly, Sora urged, pulling Hwa-Yon towards a cluster of large boulders near the path leading up to the harbour road. Hide here. Give me the ledger. Hwa-Yon reluctantly handed it over. Sora, what are you going to do? Create a diversion. Get the inspector's attention. Sora tucked the ledger securely back inside her tunic. She looked at Hwa-Yon, her eyes filled with fierce determination. Be ready. Before Hwa-Yon could argue, Sora scrambled up the rocks and onto the path, directly into the path of Magistrate Kim. Magistrate! She yelled, her voice carrying over the wind. Kim stopped, startled, recognizing the boy Dal. You! How did you escape? I have proof, Sora shouted, patting her tunic. Proof of your smuggling, your murders. Kim's face contorted with rage. Silence him, permanently, he shrieked at his guards. Overseer Choi, reaching the path, drew a knife and charged at Sora. Sora stood her ground, bracing herself. But just as Choi lunged, a figure leaped from behind the boulders. Hwa-Yon, holding her heavy lantern high, swung it with all her might, catching Choi squarely on the side of the head. He crumpled to the ground. Simultaneously, another shout came from the harbour road. Halt, in the king's name! What is the meaning of this? Through the driving rain, they saw him, the royal inspector, flanked by his own armed retinue, drawn by the commotion. Magistrate Kim froze, his face paling dramatically. His guards hesitated, caught between their master's orders and the undeniable authority of the royal inspector. Inspector! Sora cried out, stepping forward, ignoring the stunned guards. Magistrate Kim Chil-hyun is a traitor and a murderer. He runs a smuggling ring, steals royal tribute, and silenced my family, the Henyo leaders, when they discovered his crimes. I have the proof. She pulled the oilskin package from her tunic, holding it aloft. Kim lunged for it, desperation making him reckless. Lies! Seize this lying peasant! But the inspector's men were faster, their swords drawn, blocking Kim's path. Magistrate Kim, the inspector said, his voice cold and sharp as the rain. You will release Master Ahn, and you, he pointed at Sora, will present your evidence. Trembling slightly from adrenaline and cold, Sora handed the oilskin package to the inspector. He took it, his eyes scanning Sora, then Hwa-Yon, who stood protectively near her bruised father, then the groaning Overseer Choi on the ground, and finally, the trapped, furious Magistrate Kim. The inspector unwrapped the package under the flickering light of his guards' lanterns. He examined the ledger, his expression grim. He unfolded the letter, reading Sora's mother's final words. The silence stretched, broken only by the storm and the sea. Magistrate Kim Chil-hyun, the inspector declared, his voice ringing with authority. By the evidence of this ledger and testimony, I place you under arrest for treason, smuggling, theft, and murder. Seize him and his men. Kim's guards dropped their weapons, unwilling to fight the royal authority. Kim himself let out a strangled cry of denial and rage as the inspector's guards restrained him. Overseer Choi was also bound. Master Ahn, freed, stumbled towards Hwa-Yon, disbelief and relief warring on his face. The inspector turned to Sora. You have shown extraordinary courage, young woman. Your family's name will be cleared and their sacrifice honored. What is your name?" Sora stood tall, the rain washing over her face, meeting his gaze directly. "My name is Sora, daughter of Hasunhi, Henyo of Jeju." The storm passed, leaving behind a washed-clean sky and the wreckage of Magistrate Kim's reign. The royal inspector conducted a swift but thorough investigation. The legend